Everyone, tonight I want to talk to you about something incredibly powerful, something that resides deep within us all, a force, a law, a truth that we often forget in the rush of our lives. It's the understanding that God will do what He promised, and we must trust His timing. We live in a world that's fast-paced, where we are constantly told that we must move quickly, achieve success now, and demand results immediately. We're bombarded by the idea that everything can be solved with enough willpower, effort, or the right strategy. But there's a deeper truth, a truth that transcends the noise of the world. God's timing is not the same as our timing. You see, when we feel that urgency creeping in, when we feel the pressure of deadlines, expectations, or even desperation, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. But there's something powerful at work behind the scenes, something we can't always see, but it's always there. Imagine for a moment that you're holding a seed in your hand. It's small, it's simple, and at first glance it doesn't look like much. But you know that within that seed there's an entire future. There's life, growth, beauty, and possibility. But if you take that seed and you plant it in the ground, you can't rush the process. You can't will the tree to grow faster. It has its own rhythm, its own timing. And though you may not see the progress every day, it is growing, slowly, steadily, under the surface. That's how God's promises work. They're like seeds planted in the soil of your heart. When God speaks to you, when He makes a promise to you, whether it's a promise of healing, restoration, purpose, or peace, those promises are already alive within you. They're real. They are unfolding in ways you may not fully understand yet. But trusting God's timing is where the magic happens. It's when you learn to surrender to the flow, to trust that the divine order of life is at work even when you can't see it. It's when you release your need to control every aspect of your journey, and instead, you align with a force that is far greater than any human effort. In those moments of waiting, when the promise feels far away, that's when the real transformation happens. That's when your faith is stretched. That's when you begin to understand that God is not a clockmaker. He is the Creator, and He operates outside of the boundaries of time as we know it. What looks like a delay is often preparation. What feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater. The challenge is to remain in trust even when it feels like the world is moving faster than you. To remember that His promises are not just random words. They are a divine law that will come to pass in their perfect time. You don't need to force it. You don't need to rush. You just need to trust and allow space for God's work to unfold. When you trust His timing, you release the tension of trying to figure it all out. You let go of the need to control outcomes, and in doing so, you open yourself up to the possibilities that you may have never imagined. As we walk this journey of life, we must remember, God doesn't operate on human schedules. He doesn't do things the way we think they should be done, but He is faithful. His promises are sure, and they will come to pass in His perfect timing. So, I encourage you today, whatever you're waiting for, whatever promise you're holding on to, trust that it is already unfolding in ways you cannot yet see. Know that your faith, your patience, and your trust in God's timing are key to unlocking the miracles that await you. God will do what He promised. The question is, can you trust His timing? Because in the end, His timing is always right. His timing is always perfect. Trusting God's timing is one of the most powerful principles we can embrace. In a world where everything seems to move at lightning speed, it can be incredibly challenging to trust that things are unfolding in their rightful time. We often become impatient when things don't happen as quickly as we expect, or when our plans don't align with the timeline we've set for ourselves. This impatience can lead to frustration, doubt, and even a sense of abandonment. But the truth is, God's timing is always perfect, even if it doesn't match our own expectations. When we learn to trust God's timing, we acknowledge that there is a greater purpose and a divine order that governs everything in our lives. The delays, detours, and pauses aren't signs of rejection or failure. They are part of a larger plan we may not yet fully understand. Trusting God's timing requires patience, faith, and the understanding that everything is unfolding for our highest good. It requires us to relinquish control and trust that the right opportunities, people, and circumstances will align at just the right moment. In those moments when it feels like we're waiting forever, we must remember that we are being shaped, prepared, and refined. We might not see the immediate results or understand why things aren't happening as fast as we want, but we can trust that the process is leading us towards something better. God's timing works on a level far beyond our comprehension, and though it may seem slow or uncertain at times, we can rest in the assurance that everything is happening according to a perfect plan. True trust is learning to let go of our timelines and embrace the unfolding of God's design for our lives. God's promises are not just words spoken into the air. They are living, breathing truths planted deep within us. When God speaks a promise, it takes root in our hearts and begins a process of transformation. Whether it's a promise of healing, provision, restoration, or a new purpose, these promises are not bound by time or circumstances. They are seeds of potential that carry divine power to manifest in our lives at the right moment. Even if we don't see the immediate evidence of these promises, they are still alive and working within us, growing quietly beneath the surface. We often fail to realize that God's promises are already at work in our lives, even when things don't look the way we expect them to. The seeds He plants in us may take time to grow, and the external world may not reflect their true power immediately, but inside, something is happening. These promises are not subject to the limitations of time or our own understanding. They exist in a realm beyond our sight, and they are being prepared to come into fruition when the time is right. When we hold on to God's promises, we are holding on to the belief that His Word is true and powerful. This belief is what sustains us through the waiting periods, through the uncertainty, and through the challenges. The promise is real, even if we don't see it yet. And as we trust in its unfolding, we begin to see how everything aligns, how our circumstances shift, and how we grow into the person capable of receiving the fulfillment of that promise. This process may take longer than we anticipate, but it doesn't diminish the fact that God's promises are always alive, always at work, and always leading us towards something greater. Patience is one of the most difficult virtues to cultivate, yet it is absolutely essential for trusting God's timing. In a world driven by instant gratification, we are constantly conditioned to expect quick results. Whether it's through technology, social media, or even daily conveniences, we are rarely required to wait for things. This has made us impatient, and often we try to force things to happen before their time. However, true growth and fulfillment rarely come from rushing through life. Patience allows us to surrender to God's process, knowing that what He has promised will manifest at the right time. When we practice patience, we are actively choosing to trust that things will unfold according to God's plan, not ours. It's about letting go of the need to control every aspect of our lives and allowing space for God to move in ways we may not fully understand. This patience is not passive, it's an act of faith. It requires us to stay grounded even when things feel uncertain and to continue moving forward even when the outcome isn't immediately visible. In moments of waiting, patience invites us to deepen our relationship with God. It teaches us to rely on His wisdom and His timing rather than on our limited understanding. We may not always understand why things aren't happening as quickly as we hope, but in those moments, patience helps us align our hearts with the truth that God is always working behind the scenes. By waiting in faith, we are aligning ourselves with the rhythm of God's will, trusting that the best things are worth the wait. Patience also refines our character, helping us become more resilient and prepared for the blessings that will come when the time is right. Surrendering control and aligning with God's plan is one of the most freeing and transformative actions we can take. We often spend so much of our lives trying to control every outcome, manage every detail, and anticipate every challenge. We believe that if we can just stay ahead, stay on top of things, or push harder, we can make things happen in our favor. But in doing so, we can lose sight of the fact that we are not the ultimate architects of our lives. The truth is There is a greater plan at work, a divine design that is unfolding in ways we might not yet see. To truly trust God's timing, we must let go of the need to control. This means relinquishing our desire to manipulate situations, to force outcomes, or to plan every single step ourselves. It means stepping into a space of surrender where we acknowledge that God's wisdom far surpasses our own, and His timing is always perfect. Surrender is not about giving up or resigning ourselves to passivity. Rather, it's about actively choosing to trust that the best outcomes come when we align ourselves with God's will, rather than trying to force our own will into every situation. Aligning with God's plan means listening to His guidance, trusting in His promises, and being willing to move in the direction He leads, even if it doesn't make sense to us in the moment. It means embracing the uncertainty that often comes with not knowing exactly how things will unfold, but trusting that God is always leading us towards something greater than we can imagine. When we surrender our control, we free ourselves from the burden of anxiety and fear about the future, knowing that God's plan is far better than anything we could orchestrate on our own. Waiting is not always an easy process, but it is an essential part of the transformation that takes place in our lives. It is in the moments of waiting that we are shaped, refined, and prepared for what is to come. The challenge often lies in the feeling of inactivity or uncertainty during the waiting period. We might feel as though nothing is happening, that progress is stalled, or that our dreams are slipping away. However, the reality is that during the waiting, something powerful is unfolding beneath the surface. Waiting is not a passive experience. It is a time of preparation, growth, and development. In this space of waiting, we are not being neglected or forgotten, we are being strengthened. Just as a seed must remain in the soil before it can grow into a tree, we too must remain rooted in faith while we wait for our promises to unfold. The waiting process provides us with the opportunity to reflect, to become more self-aware, and to gain clarity about what we truly desire. It allows us to develop patience, perseverance, and trust in God's perfect timing. While we may not understand why things are taking longer than expected, we can trust that God is preparing us in ways that we cannot see. In waiting, we also learn to cultivate a deeper connection with God. As we wait, we are invited to grow closer to Him, to rely more on His wisdom, and to understand His timing more fully. We are reminded that waiting is not a wasted time. It is an active period of growth that leads to the fulfillment of promises. Each day spent in anticipation is a day closer to the revelation of God's plan, which is always better than anything we could have imagined. Trusting beyond what we can see is one of the greatest challenges, and yet one of the most profound acts of faith. In our daily lives, we are conditioned to rely on what we can observe, measure, and control. We trust in tangible evidence and visible results, and we expect to see immediate outcomes for our efforts. But true trust in God requires us to go beyond the surface and embrace what we cannot yet see. It means accepting that God's work is often happening behind the scenes outside of our view, and that even when things appear stagnant or uncertain, He is still moving on our behalf. This kind of trust means believing in the unseen, holding on to faith even when there are no visible signs of progress. It's about trusting that God is orchestrating everything in the background, even when the circumstances we face don't align with our expectations. When we place our faith in the unseen, we acknowledge that our understanding is limited, and we open ourselves up to the mystery of God's plan. We trust that there is more happening than meets the eye, and that what we see today is not the full picture of what will unfold in the future. Often, we find ourselves asking questions: why is nothing happening? Why are my efforts not yielding results? It is in these moments that we are called to deepen our trust. We must trust that God is working even in the moments of quiet and stillness, preparing the way for what is to come. Though we cannot see the entire path ahead, trusting in God's unseen work allows us to rest in the certainty that His plan is unfolding perfectly, even if we can't yet see how it all fits together. Divine timing is not the same as human timing, and understanding this difference is essential. Cultivating patience and trust in God's plan. As human beings, we are conditioned by the clock, the calendar, and the schedules of everyday life. We measure our progress by tangible milestones, and we often expect things to happen on our timeline, according to our own plans. When things don't unfold as quickly as we expect, it can lead to frustration, doubt, and even a sense of being off track. However, divine timing operates on a level beyond our understanding, and it is rooted in wisdom that we may not immediately recognize. God's timing is not bound by the constraints of the world we live in. It is not governed by deadlines, seasons, or personal milestones. While we may feel that we are ready for something now, God sees the bigger picture. He knows what needs to be in place before we can receive the full manifestation of His promises. Often, what appears to be a delay or setback is actually a necessary part of our preparation. The wait is not in vain. It is an opportunity for growth, refining, and alignment with God's perfect plan for us. When we trust in divine timing, we release our need to control when things happen. We step out of the race against the clock and embrace the idea that what is meant for us will come at the perfect time. It is during this waiting period that we are asked to align our hearts and minds with God's rhythm, letting go of our own expectations and trusting that He knows what is best. Our impatience can only delay the fulfillment of His will, but trust in divine timing allows us to experience the unfolding of life with peace and assurance. Setbacks, while often perceived as obstacles or failures, are frequently divine setups for something greater. It's easy to become discouraged when things don't go as planned, when doors close, or when circumstances seem to be working against us. In these moments, it's tempting to view setbacks as the end of the road, as if they signal that we've lost our way. However, from a higher perspective, setbacks are often part of a bigger plan. They are redirections, preparations, and sometimes even blessings in disguise. When a setback occurs, it may be because God is positioning us for something better, something that aligns more fully with His purpose for us. What we might see as a delay or disappointment could be the exact thing we need to be redirected toward a greater opportunity. God knows the path that we are meant to walk, and sometimes He allows a setback to clear the way for something more in line with His perfect timing. We may not see it immediately, but with time we often look back and realize that the setback was exactly what was needed to prepare us for the next phase of our journey. Setbacks are also opportunities for growth. They test our resilience, our faith, and our ability to stay grounded when things don't go as planned. Rather than seeing setbacks as failures, we are invited to reframe them as moments of refinement. Each time we encounter a challenge, we are being shaped into the person capable of receiving the greater blessings that lie ahead. The strength and wisdom gained through setbacks equip us to step into new levels of purpose, trust, and abundance when the time is right. God's plan for our lives is unfolding in perfect order, even when we can't see it. We often get caught up in the day-to-day, focusing on immediate results and measurable progress, and we forget that there is a greater rhythm at play. Every event, every encounter, every moment of our lives is part of a larger design, even if we don't understand it at the time. What might seem like a coincidence or a random event is actually a piece of the puzzle that's being carefully put together. Trusting in this divine order means believing that nothing in our lives happens by accident. Everything serves a greater purpose. Sometimes we look at our lives and question why things aren't going as we imagined. We might face struggles, delays, or unexpected detours, and it's easy to feel like we're off course. However, God's plan is not bound by the limitations of our understanding. He sees the end from the beginning, and what may appear as a detour is often the exact route we need to take to reach the next step in our journey. This awareness gives us the freedom to trust that even in moments of uncertainty, God is working everything out in the right time and the right way. When we trust that God's plan is unfolding in perfect order, we release the need to control every detail of our lives. We learn to surrender to the flow, knowing that we are exactly where we need to be in this moment. This trust doesn't mean that everything will be easy or go according to our personal timeline, but it does mean that we are not alone in our journey. God is always working in the background, orchestrating every piece of the puzzle, even when we can't see how it all fits together. When we trust in God's timing, we open ourselves to the possibility of miracles. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by life's challenges and to believe that things will never change or improve. We may become discouraged when things don't happen according to our schedule, when our prayers seem unanswered, or when the road ahead appears unclear. However, trusting in God's timing means accepting that He is always at work, even when we can't see it, and that He has the power to bring about profound changes in our lives at the perfect moment. Miracles often don't follow our expectations or our timelines. They are not bound by human limitations, and they rarely happen in the way we anticipate. When we trust God's timing, we allow space for the extraordinary to unfold in ways that we might not have imagined. We stop focusing on how things should happen and instead open our hearts to the possibility that God's plans are far greater than anything we could have dreamed. What may seem impossible in the moment can shift dramatically when we place our trust in His perfect timing. God's miracles are often found in the unexpected and the unanticipated. When we are willing to trust in His timing, we release the pressure of trying to make things happen on our own. We acknowledge that His wisdom far exceeds our own and that His timing is always perfect. Even in the waiting periods, even in the moments when things feel stagnant, God is orchestrating a series of events that will lead to a miraculous outcome. Trusting God's timing is an act of faith that opens the door for divine interventions, breakthroughs, and the miraculous to manifest in our lives in ways that are beyond our comprehension.